This edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of world-class software like PDF Pen for Mac, PDF Pen Pro for Mac, PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander for Mac, and Text Expander for iPhone and iPad. Learn more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. And by Eero, the wireless mesh network solution that you need. Visit Eero.com to get yours and use the coupon code MacVoices to receive free overnight shipping. Welcome to Mac Notables on Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, slowly but surely, we're ticking off more of the Mac Notables, getting them back on the trail, and nothing makes me happier than to have Mr. Ted Landau back. I finally drug him back out of retirement. Ted, it's great to see you.
Great to see you, and wow, nothing makes you happier. That puts me at the top of the list, huh?
Absolutely. That's where you belong. That's where you belong. Either that or it's a commentary on my life, but we won't get into that.
Okay.
So many things, Ted. It's been quite a while since you've been on, but the thing that obviously is top of mind, I think, for so many of us is, did you get an iPhone X?
Yes, I did. I went all in on black. Actually, I got a new, I don't know if you can see here, the black Milano Loop Apple Watch 3 and an all black iPhone X. So I'm completely black. So.
Wow. Okay. So,
as it were.
Yes. Yeah. You don't look like it.
With accoutrements, that is.
Yes. Yeah. So how have your iPhone X setup and adventures and all been?
Interesting. When I got the iPhone X, before we even talk about it, I'd like to maybe back step a bit and talk about setting up the iPhone X.
Yeah.
The first thing that I had to do, obviously, when I got it out of the box, is I wanted to transfer all the stuff I had from my iPhone 6S, which was the last iPhone I was using. I never got an iPhone 7, and transfer it to the iPhone X. And the way that 2 years ago, the last time I had to do something like this, the way that I typically did it was to do it from iTunes. And I would do the restore from iTunes, the restore iPhone, which essentially erased the entire phone. So then you got an option to set it up as new or restore from the backup that was on your iTunes backup. I said restore. And if you had an encrypted backup, which I did, it restored everything. It restored all your apps. It restored all your media, your music, your video. It restored all the photos and restored all your passwords. And essentially, you had duplicated it. This time, because there was all this news about the new Quick Start way of doing things, I decided to use that instead. And if you're not familiar with it, the Quick Start method is where you just almost magically, it's so typical of Apple, I loved it, where we almost magically just put your two iPhones, the old one and the new one, within a few inches of each other, and they interact, and you're essentially asked on your iPhone screens, do you want to transfer the stuff from your old iPhone to your new iPhone? And if you say yes, it begins the transfer. So I did that. My original intention was to simply do that as a test, because I want, as someone, with my background of wanting to know the ins and outs of everything Apple related, I felt like I needed to see how this worked, even if I wasn't going to actually depend on it. And I was, like I said, impressed. And in the end, it copied everything except, understandably, it didn't copy the media, the music and videos, as well as the photos from my Mac, because it was basically doing an iCloud backup as what it was accessing, so it didn't have that information. It also clearly was downloading the apps from the internet, not getting them from my Mac. And most disappointingly, it didn't transfer, at least in my case, it didn't transfer my passwords. It did do my health data, which it promised it would do, and it did that successfully. But it didn't do my passwords, and I had to spend intermittent time over the next several days re-entering passwords whenever I launched an app, and it said that it didn't know it. But the good news was, what happened was I decided before I went, and then my original intention was I was going to go back and then do the restore iPhone thing. But I was so impressed with how easily this worked that I decided I would just go with it. And I wound up thinking, I really don't need to do the restore. Number one, I use Apple Music. And so with Apple Music, you essentially turn over your music and to some extent videos to the Apple Music app altogether. And I said, well, yes, I want. The problem was I want some music on my iPhone locally, so that if I'm ever in a place where there's no internet connection, I can still listen to music that I've downloaded to the iPhone. And so I keep a collection of some of my favorite stuff locally on the iPhone itself. But I could just easily do that again. I just launched the iPhone app and then select, there's the option built into the music app on the iPhone to download things that you want. It worked very fast, very easily. So I just went through all the things I thought I might want to keep locally on the iPhone, a whole bunch of playlists that I had basically. And in relatively little time, it was there. And then for photos, I had this 256 gigabyte iPhone that I'd gotten, so there was virtually no restrictions as to how many pictures I could have put on, but I didn't want them all. But I just said, instead of trying to duplicate what I had on the old iPhone, I would just check off what I wanted and do it again. And I did that, and it all worked beautifully. As I said, the only hassle was the passwords. And in fact, in some sense, I think it might have been better to do it this way, because one anomaly, for instance, was on my iPhone 6, the documents and data section on that colored bar that appears along the bottom of your iTunes window when you have your iPhone connected, said I had 12 gigabytes of data. In my new iPhone 10, it said I had only 4 gigabytes of data. So somehow I lost 8 gigabytes of data, which at first made me a little nervous, but nothing ever seemed to be missing or going wrong. So I'm starting to think, well, maybe this was clutter that had been, so to speak, that had been accumulated over the years. Could be 8 gigabytes of stuff I didn't really need and was just as glad to be rid of it. So in the end, I just stayed with that quick start. Now, of course, the quick start would work even better for people unlike me who keep everything in the cloud, for which the iCloud backup is perfect, for which they use iCloud Photos Library and Apple Music, and that's all fine. So if you don't have anything stored locally on your Mac that you want to transfer to the iPhone, then this quick start method is perfect, and I'm sure that's the direction that Apple wants us to go anyway. Both from a monetary perspective, they want us to spend the money on those services, and from a technological perspective, I think they like the idea of making the device independent of the Mac, which I think is appealing too. So all is good. There's a postscript to all that, but let me just pause in case you want to say something here, because I obviously monopolized the conversation.
No, not at all. I had a similar experience, although one little change with mine. I was going to do the direct connect where I backed it up to my MacBook Pro and then was going to restore it from there. And I found that I had done all the upgrades to my let's see, I had a 7 Plus. Mm-hmm. And so I was running 11.1, but when the phone came, it was only at 11. Mm-hmm. And so it would not let me restore to something lower. It'll let you restore up this upstream, but not downstream. Mm-hmm. So I ended up using then the quick start method, and I was kind of glad I'd been forced into it because it was, you said, it was magical. It was fun to watch, and it was simple. The only thing, I'm with you on the passwords, but the funny thing for me was that some of the passwords did come over in some services, and some didn't. And I'd have to go back and dig my notes out to see, which ones, because I noticed that, some things would open right up, no problem. Others would not. And I got to thinking about it and think, okay, maybe it's not such a bad thing. That if I'm changing devices completely, maybe I don't want anybody, including me, to have the capability of just cloning everything, including passwords. Mm-hmm. So, but super experience.
Yes, and I think you could have always upgraded your new phone to 11.1 before you tried to do the restore. That would have worked too. So. Yeah. And yes, I did find the same thing about the passwords. There were some that did seem to transfer, but most did not. So the thing that got me thinking, though, is really all that's well and good, how easy it is, how magical that quick start method is, and how it worked all so well. But really, there's so much potential confusion about transferring data from one phone to another when you really delve into it that I think it's a process that could use some cleaning up. And I'll just, it's not worth going into all the details, but let me just give an overview of what I'm talking about. And it's worth mentioning, first of all, that none of that activated the iPhone. I had to separately go to the AT&T website to activate the new phone. Another thing that none of that does is that you have to remember there's probably a residue of your old phone in all sorts of cloud locations. There's probably a backup of your old phone that's in iCloud, and iTunes probably lists it as a device that's authorized to share data with and stuff like that. And so you probably want to go and remember to remove it from all those locations, especially if you're planning on selling your old phone. And so none of that is automatically handled. But then there's the whole issue of if someone like me, maybe it's because I overthink it in this regard, but someone like me starts thinking, what are all these different ways of doing it? How are they different? How would I decide if I was a naive user which one I wanted? There is the quick start method. That's true. But if you decide not to use it or can't use it for some reason, there's the manual method. But if you do the manual method, you can do a manual update directly from your iPhone, never attach it to your Mac, restore from a backup in iCloud, or you can attach it to your Mac and do pretty much the same thing. But then you have a situation where there's an option to either enter and answer questions and dialogues that are on your Mac in iTunes, or you have a similar set of questions that appear on your iPhone, and you can pretty much bypass dealing with iTunes on your Mac. Should I do it? Should I let the iPhone be dominant and answer all the questions there, or should I let iTunes on the Mac be dominant and answer all the questions there? That's another issue to deal with. Then you get to the issue, well, let's say I don't want to do any of that. I want to do it on the Mac, but as soon as you look at iTunes on the Mac, there are two options there: restore backup and restore iPhone. And then the question becomes, what, especially if you don't really know, I mean, which one do I want? Restore backup, restore iPhone? Is there a difference? If there is a difference, which difference would I prefer? What are the implications of it? Am I going to lose something one way and not the other way? It gets into all that, and then of course there's the issue of an encrypted backup is necessary if you're going to want to transfer your passwords. Are you aware of that? And so, really, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there was like 6 different ways I could transfer data. There was restore backup, restore iPhone, restore from an iCloud backup, restore from an iTunes backup, let the iPhone be your guide, let your Mac be your guide, do the quick start method. And I searched in vain for any article either on the Apple support site or on third-party sites that clearly explained all the options and all the differences between the options and how you would decide which one was the best one for you. So yeah, I mean, it's sort of a half empty, half full. If you just want to go with the quick start method and say this is fine and accept it and deal with any negative consequences, as few as they might be, and figure them out, and then you're set, great. But if you really want to figure out what all the different options are and why you would want to choose one over the other, it could take you several days to try to figure it out. So I think it's a process that Apple could try to simplify in that sense.
It's interesting because you're right, and I really only had thought of the 2 options. But the one thing that I think is interesting, Ted, is I haven't seen anybody doing one of those, oh my God pieces, that the restore screwed up my phone. Everybody seems to have made the transition over easily with a couple little quirks like we were talking about passwords, but nothing horrible. And I don't know that anybody's done any comparisons. So that might be a good thing for some people to do as far as figuring out what goes which way, or maybe it's just different routes to get to the same end result.
I think mostly it's different ways to get to the same end result. The big issue, I think, and it affects a diminishing number of users, of which I am still included, are people who have a lot of data stored locally on iTunes on their Mac that isn't in the cloud, and they want to make sure that data gets transferred to their iPhone. They've been syncing their iPhone via iTunes on the Mac to get that data there. An iCloud backup restore won't do it. And then the question becomes, how best do you do it? And there are numerous ways. Restore the iPhone is the one we've been talking about here, and that's obviously the most direct way. But there are other ways too. If you did a restore transfer another way, and wanted to get that data there without restarting all over again, there are ways to do it. There's another whole set of options. There's that app iMazing, which is a pretty amazing app, which lets you transfer data, customizing exactly what you want to transfer across. You could use something like that. But again, there's just so many choices. That's almost partially why I gave up and decided not to do it. I said, okay, I've done it this way. The phone is working. Let's not mess with things. And so I said, can I live with it this way? Can I get the data I want? Yes, I can. And so I did. But again, to the extent that you're not using data locally on your Mac to transfer to your iPhone, and more people are that way, then almost any way you do it will get you to the same end result. I agree.
MacVoices is sponsored by Eero, the wireless mesh networking system you really need. No, I mean it. You really need Eero right now. If you have spotty Wi-Fi coverage in your home or small business, you need Eero right now. If you have trouble setting up your wireless home network system, you need Eero right now. If your router hasn't been updated since the last congressional election, you need Eero right now. Eero's wireless mesh network system is physically small, but huge in size and features. Just plug power and an internet connection into your Eero, use your iPhone to go through the setup process, and you're good to go with powerful, fast, wireless access. But that's just where it starts. Add Eero beacons throughout your home or office to expand the coverage so that you have full speed, full power, full access everywhere. Adding the beacons is as simple as finding an open power outlet and connecting them to the main Eero via the Eero app. Boom. Your network is now automatically extended. The new second-generation Eero has added a third 5 GHz radio, making it tri-band. That's tech talk that basically means that your Eero is now even better and twice as fast as previous models. And a new thread radio means you can easily connect your smart doorbell, smart locks, smart light bulbs, and any other smart devices you might happen to have. Are you concerned about the stories you see on the news about needing to keep your router updated because of the most recent hack? Eero handles that for you, pushing their updates to your device automatically so that you don't need to bother. When I first got my Eero, I set aside an hour, thinking it would take me that long to get up and running based on past experience with other routers. In fact, I was back online in about 15 minutes, and that included the time it took to go to 2 different corners of my house and plug in the Eero beacons. The biggest hassle of the whole process was finding an open outlet to plug them into. But that was my problem, not Eero's. If you want all these features and more out of your wireless network, then you have to get Eero. Visit Eero.com right now to learn more and use the code MacVoices to get free overnight shipping. That means that by this time tomorrow, your network will be better, faster, and more secure. Again, Eero.com and the code MacVoices gets you free overnight shipping to get you the best wireless experience you've ever had. Thanks to Eero for their support of MacVoices. One thing I did want to ask you, and if you don't mind saying it, and if you do, then just skip over it, but you said you had to go to AT&T to activate. Did you get your phone from AT&T, or did you get it from Apple through the upgrade program, or how did you do that? 'Cause I did not have that step.
I got it through AT&T, and what happened was I ordered one from Apple, and it said it was going to be 3 weeks before I got it. And even Apple asked, I'm sure you had the same experience. Apple demanded to know what carrier I intended to use. You couldn't order a carrier-free unlocked iPhone yet. At some point, I assume you can. So I told Apple I was going to do AT&T, and then I got some note that said, "Great, we'll make sure that we'll notify AT&T so your iPhone will be ready to be activated when you get it." But then instead, I went to the AT&T website, and they said I could have it immediately, like they would ship it on launch day. And so I ordered it from them too, and then canceled my Apple order. And indeed, I got it. I didn't get it on the Friday of the launch day, but it came on the following Monday, one business day later, essentially. And when I did that, it had the SIM in it. I didn't have to swap SIMs or anything like that. Those days are gone. But when I was done setting up the iPhone with the Quick Start method, my iPhone still wasn't taking calls, so to speak. And so I did get when the iPhone came in the box, there was a little piece of paper that said, "Go to this website location on the AT&T site to activate your phone." And so I did, and I went there, and I activated the phone, and that was it. So I don't know. That might be specific to me having gotten it from AT&T, but that's what I had to do. So.
That's interesting. I didn't have that. I mean, it said that it was connecting to an activation server, but it all was seamless. It just happened. One corollary to my story was that I was part of the Apple trade-in program. So got my phone, got everything set up, everything's cooking along. Got a package that came and said, take your SIM out, obviously take it off of iCloud, drop it in here, call FedEx for pickup, and you're pretty much done. One of the instructions, though, and of course, you're sticking your phone, which still has a heck of a lot of value. It's not yours anymore, but it has a lot of value. And it said, be sure to get a receipt from the FedEx driver. Well, the FedEx driver showed up and said, I don't have any receipts. I don't know what you're talking about. And so I ended up taking a picture of him holding my package and said, if it doesn't get there, I'm going to come looking for you. And of course, and he seemed to enjoy that, got a big kick out of that. But in just like 2 days, I had a note back from Apple saying your trade-in is complete. We closed out the loan and you're good to go. So it was about as painless and smooth a transition as I could possibly have had.
But again, it all shows that there are multiple paths to the endpoint. Some people had to, like me, had to go to the AT&T website. Some people didn't. Some people have to deal with what you're dealing with. Again, it's nothing. I don't mean to be too critical because all roads lead to Rome, apparently. So it's kind of nice, but it seems unnecessarily complex. Too many choices, too much information, confusing. The more you look into it, the more confusing it gets. It's almost ignorance is bliss. It's almost like if you don't think about it too much, it works out a lot better.
Yeah. So after all that, how do you like it?
I love it. I before I got it, I must say, you read all this stuff, people talking about all sorts of negative things. The notch is terrible. The Face ID doesn't work. There's software that isn't updated to work with it, and this. And I started thinking, oh my God, maybe this is like a beta phone. And I should wait until next year when they actually have the final version. But I said, no, that's not me. I'm not going to do that. I'll take my chances, and I'm exceedingly glad that I did. I mean, almost everything negative that I heard, I consider to be hyped out of proportion at this point, at least for somebody like me. I'm already so comfortable not having a home button that I prefer it, with very few exceptions. I mean, I love just swiping up to go to the home screen now. The only thing that still I find a little bit irritating is to get to the whatever it's called, the multi-app screen, where you can see all the apps at one time and slide to that movement where you move your finger, slide up, and you have to do it slower than you would normally do to get to the home screen. And I find it a little bit tricky sometimes. It doesn't work, and I have to do it 3 or 4 times. And then, of course, if I want to delete apps, that I still have trouble remembering that I have to first hold it to get that minus icon to appear in the corner. If I just swipe up to delete an app, it doesn't work. On the other hand, once you get the minus icon, it's kind of nice. You don't have to tap on that icon to delete an app. Swiping up does work at that point. So that's kind of nice. But aside from that, almost nothing about the interface bothers me. I know I have been reading things about, well, I'm going to back up 1 second. Another thing that I like talking about swiping is that now you can swipe along the bottom of the screen to go back and forth between 2 apps, which I think is a new feature in the iPhone 10. And you just go boom, and you're one app, go boom, and you're another app. That's kind of nice too. So that's even an improvement over, for me, the way things used to work. I have seen a lot of complaints about people who say they don't like that they have to swipe down from the upper right-hand corner to get to the control panel. I don't mind that. I think when I thought about it and read some of the articles about it, the real difference there between how much that's going to annoy you is to the extent to which you use an iPhone with one hand or not. One-handed users are going to be annoyed by that. There's no doubt about it. But I rarely use my iPhone. I'm the sort of person, that I don't know if you can see it here. Maybe I got to go down a little bit. Where this is how I use the iPhone almost all the time. I'm holding it in one hand and using my index finger in the other hand. And to swipe down from the upper right-hand corner to get the control panel is no big deal if that's how I use my iPhone. So if you're a two-handed iPhone user like I am, the control panel will not be an issue. One-handed, maybe. The notch, it's almost irrelevant to me. For vertical applications, it's almost never a problem. The only time it's ever even mildly irritated me is for a landscape thing, especially video full screen. But I think it must be set by default for most video anyway, so that it's in that mode where the border, there's vertical columns to the left and right of the video, so it doesn't go into the notch area. And while that, yes, and you can complain that makes the image a little bit smaller than it could otherwise be, it gets rid of the notch. So you take as an annoyance. So you take your pick, and it just almost never bothers me. Face ID has worked nearly 100% accurately for me. I like it better most times. I like that I just look at the phone and it's unlocked. I don't even have to lift a finger literally to unlock the iPhone. It might be a little bit awkward for doing Apple Pay that way compared to the Touch ID. I'm not sure, but I don't use it anyway for Apple Pay. I use my watch for Apple Pay, and that works the same way with either phone. So again, it's a non-issue for me. The display is incredible. I've never seen such a gorgeous display. Again, if people have written, you have to see it to believe it, and you do. It doesn't look like a screen to me anymore. It looks like somebody taped a very high quality printout over the phone and left it there. There's no digital artifacts whatsoever. It looks like somebody just painted it or something onto the phone. It's just, and so I'm loving it for that. I like the larger size. Even though the screen is larger than the iPhone 8 Plus, it seems a little smaller. Partly, I think it's just the optical illusion of not having the borders, but I also think partly it's that it's thinner, and it doesn't have quite the width by length dimensions that make it seem bigger. But it is bigger, and it's great to have a bigger screen and without a bigger footprint. So I'm liking that. This is my first time having the new features with the camera. It's my first dual lens iPhone. It's the first time I have that 2x telephoto lens. It's the first time I've been playing with portrait mode and now the portrait lighting mode. That's been great. I love the telephoto giving me the option to finally have a digital zoom. Even a 2x zoom is a significant difference from having no zoom at all. The quality of camera, obviously, fantastic. It's better every time. The portrait lighting, the portrait mode actually is kind of nice, where you can get the blurred background. I do like that. The portrait lighting is still an interesting gimmick to me. I'm not sure how much I'm going to wind up using that, but and I actually have a lot of problems with the stage lighting mode, where it's hard for me to get it to stay in stage lighting mode. But as somebody pointed out, you don't have to. You just take it in any portrait mode, and you can change it to stage lighting in editing. So once I realize that, I don't even bother. I just take it in portrait mode and worry about what lighting effect I want later. So so that's been great. I don't mind the lack of a headphone jack. It means very little to me at this point. I last year shifted to using a Beats X wireless headphone, and I'm using it now with the iPhone 10, and so it's working just fine. Hey Siri, there you can see, works much more reliably than it did on my old iPhone. That's I don't know. I can just keep going on and on. There's so little that I dislike about it. It's a very no-brainer, happy decision for me overall at this point.
I can echo pretty much everything you've said. I had one moment of concern, I guess, when I first started using it, that, oh boy, I've got new gestures to learn and all this, and it didn't take a whole day. I was kind of surprised at how quickly I absorbed all the new options available to me, and now every once in a while I catch myself being just a little amazed that, okay, gesture here, gesture. I'm not even tapping on anything. I'm just maneuvering so flawlessly with just gestures all over the phone. And I realize that's what you have to do, but it was so simple to learn it. And I really was concerned that, I start to sound a little curmudgeonly. Hey, we had a perfectly good interface. Why did they have to start messing around and change some of the swipes and all? And it was no problem at all for me to learn them and adapt. And I think that's a tribute to somebody's thinking
Absolutely.
and the study
they did
that
a
they
great
put
job.
into it.
There was one, I forget what I was doing, where maybe you remember, where you have to double press the side button on the iPhone in order to do what you want to do, and it actually prompts you on the screen. It has a little thing that comes out and with some arrows pointing to the right edge of the screen saying, double press here to get this to work. I forget what it is that I was doing that got that. Anyway, at first I didn't understand what they meant. I was double tapping on the screen, which was doing absolutely nothing. And eventually I realized they were trying to guide me to the button on the side of the screen, and as soon as I double pressed that accomplished whatever it was I was trying to do then. So, so little things like that happen until you figure it out. But like you said, I've gotten comfortable. I've gotten comfortable with it incredibly fast. And you can, if you're not willing to ever change those things, then you're going to be stuck with the way things were in 2007 for ad infinity. So, this was as good a time as any to make a major change, and I think Apple did a great job.
Yeah, I almost feel sorry for the people that decided to stick with the 8, because I feel like they're now feeling a little bit of they feel a little left out of some of the cool things. I played with Animoji to start with. I can't say that I've used it, but as a tech demonstration, it was so much fun to send those to people and say, "Here, look at this." And the reactions are all over.
Yeah,
the
I
place,
sent one to Naomi, and she thought it was cute. Again, it isn't something that I expect to be using a lot, but it was fun to play with.
So, before we move on to anything else, any comments on the watch? Because I don't think we've talked since you got that either. Is that been as seamless an experience as well?
Even more seamless. I mean, I'm one of the people who have been a big fan of the watch. I think, as you know, from the word go. I love the watch for just. It fulfills my needs. It tells time, obviously, which is one thing I like. I've always had a wristwatch before I got the iPhone, and the idea that I had to pull my iPhone out of my pocket every time I wanted to see what time it was not my style, and I like that I can just look at the time now. But beyond that, I like that I get the text messages. I like that I can see phone calls. I like that I can track my exercise. I like that it shows my upcoming appointments. I like that I can quickly see weather and stocks, and I mean all the things that I use it for, which are very few things beyond the basic things that come with the watch. I use very few third-party things, but there's a couple, but very few. But basically, the basic set of stuff that comes with the watch, makes it immensely useful to me. Apple Pay, obviously, can also use it for. I like it for that. There isn't much that the new phone does more than my old one could do, but the old one was significantly slower. The old one, basically, the old one was significantly slower and had some other limitations in terms of getting software onto the iPhone itself and stuff like that. And so I thought, after 2.5 years or whatever it was that I had this phone, it was time to consider getting a new one. And I liked getting the all black one as well, which I didn't have before. I have not used the cellular function. The stainless steel models automatically come with a cellular function whether you want it or not, so I had no choice. But I haven't used it, and I don't know if I ever will. That's basically it. I have the iPhone in my pocket all the time. If there's occasions start coming up where I don't have my iPhone with me often enough, I consider it, but I don't see that happening really.
I've got the I got the option because I did not get the stainless model, and I have not activated it either. But it's nice to know it's there, and with a phone call to AT&T, I can get it activated. But so far, I'm with you. For the most part, my phone is always with me. I have heard of some people that are using it as just a phone.
Mm-hmm.
And the performance has been great. I mean, obviously, there's a little bit of an issue with privacy because you don't have. Well, that's not true unless you're using AirPods or something of that nature. So,
it works even better as a phone than my original Generation 0 one. I got the pre-Generation 1, so to speak, Apple Watch. Yeah, the quality of the sound is better. The reliability and strength of the connection seems better. It just generally works better, and it's great. I do use it sometimes. When it's just awkward, like maybe I'm carrying packages and the phone rings. And so I can just go like this and answer the phone while I'm carrying the packages instead of having to put packages down and get my iPhone out and stuff like that. I mean, we're talking about really, first world problems. Oh my God, you have to put a package down. How terrible is that? It's obviously not terrible, but it's just a convenience, and I appreciate it. So,
yeah. I did want to ask you though, how do you feel about, because this for me has been not quite a game changer, but it's just been so nice to now have Siri be able to talk back to me from the watch.
Oh, that's good too. Yeah,
yeah.
I do appreciate that. Yes, absolutely. That's another bonus. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would recommend either one of these or both to anyone. I would say, there's no reason to stay with lower models unless you are just absolutely cost conscious. Then yeah, okay. But if you can figure out a way to afford it, I don't think you're going to sit there and say, "Gee, I shouldn't have bothered with the higher model."
And in that regard, I would add, if you're thinking of getting an iPhone, I would say probably 90% of users could do just fine with the 64 gigabyte model, especially if you're a subscriber to Apple's iCloud services. I mean, if you keep your music in Apple Music, if you keep your photos in iCloud Photo Library, unless you're planning on taking, hours worth of 4K video or something like that, the odds that you would use up to 64 gigabytes are zero. So that one way you can save a little bit of money is to not opt for the 256 gigabyte model.
Yeah, and you just hit it. For video, that's probably the biggest storage suck. I haven't seen any studies done on exactly what, let's say, a base model installation would be, and then just adding a few of the productivity apps. But I went for the 256 too, just as well because of the 4K video. But yeah, MacVoices is sponsored by Smile at SmileSoftware.com. The makers of world-class software for the Mac and iOS. And there are few pieces of software more world-class than Text Expander for Mac. Text Expander puts powerful text expansion in your hands so that you can easily fill in something as simple as your name or something as complex as a chunk of code, pretty much anywhere you can enter text. That saves time, and time is money. And if you have a business, Text Expander can be an even more important part of the operation because you can share your snippets across your team, making your message consistent. That means that your customer service, your sales responses, everything can be drawing from the same set of snippets. Text Expander helps with accuracy too. If you have a particular word that you frequently misspell, create a snippet to correct it. If your profession has specialized terminology, and what profession doesn't, you can easily build a list of words that are specific to you, and by using Text Expander, you spell them right every single time. You can even style your snippet text, add images and links, and automatically insert clipboard content into a snippet. The list just keeps growing as Smile adds new capabilities. Now, with Text Expander's Life Hacker option, all your snippets sync to all your devices automatically, so the power of Text Expander is always at your command. And with free app updates, you always have the latest and greatest Smile has to offer. Text Expander is my favorite, most used productivity utility, and I think it should be yours too, because it's so easy to take advantage of its power. If you go to SmileSoftware.com right now, you can download a free trial and find out how Text Expander can make you more productive today, this afternoon, minutes after you install it. That's Smile at SmileSoftware.com for Text Expander. You won't find a single utility that makes you more productive as fast. Thanks to Smile for their ongoing support of MacVoices. So we're really happy with our Apple devices, but I also know you're a devotee of another device that I'm a fan of, and that's
Yeah,
TiVo.
yeah.
And you got one of the new. Well, I'm not sure. Is it one of the new models or just a new remote?
Just the new remote.
Okay.
Here's what happened. I got an invite. Maybe you did. I don't know. I don't know who they sent it to, what the criteria were. But I got an invite to a launch party down in San Jose last week for the TiVo Bolt Vox remote, which is, for those of you who don't follow all this, is a new version of TiVo's Bolt DVR that includes voice support for the first time. There's a new remote that comes with it with a microphone button. You press the microphone and you talk to it, and you can do a limited number of things. I mean, why don't we just talk about this before my own personal experiences get here? I've tried a number of commands, and really it's quite limited for your ability to navigate around the TiVo interface. It's best used for searching. And for searching is pretty incredible. I mean, you can say, show me all Alfred Hitchcock movies that are available to see now, and it will. You can even come up with things like, and they give you some examples like this, and I tried them and it worked. And you can show me the movie where somebody says, "Show me the money," and it actually will come up with Jerry Maguire. It knows that. Wow. And you can use it to change stations. You can say go to Fox News, go to TNT, go to MSNBC, whatever, and it knows what those numbers are. Will take you to those stations. And there's some other things it can do. So it's not unuseful. It's certainly not essential. But I was looking forward to playing with it. And now getting back to this launch party, one of the inducements to come to this launch party was that everybody who came could get a remote, and the new Vox remote works with recent older versions of TiVo. It works over Bluetooth. They give you a little Bluetooth dongle to attach to the back of the TiVo, and then the Vox remote will work with your old TiVo. So I said, that sounds great. I can try the voice stuff without having to buy a new TiVo. So I went to the launch party, which was fun itself. If we had more time, I could tell you about it, but I'm probably better off skipping that right now. And I got the remote, and now when you get home and install the remote, it turns out, which I sort of knew, they had warned me of this, I think, that the new remote requires a new software update on the TiVo itself. And it is not a minor update. This is where the problems come in. It is a major overhaul of the TiVo interface. The TiVo is unrecognizable once you've updated. Everything is different. And not only is everything different, it's highly graphical. So where there were lists before, now there are squares that have graphic images of a show. So instead of just saying instead of just saying "This Is Us" TV show, it now has a graphic picture of some of the stars of the show with the words "This Is Us" over their photograph, and you can actually select that as a way to launch the show as opposed to just a list. And I found that navigating around all this graphic stuff just made it harder. I didn't find it an improvement. There are some ways that they say, there are some improvements in it. They say that they will try to anticipate what shows you want to watch at given times of day, and those are the ones that will be highlighted in the graphic images. So the first graphic images that you should see are the shows you're most likely to select to watch at that particular time of day. So you don't have to drill into the list. You can still get a list. You just have to find it. It's more difficult to find a list of text listings. But ideally, they're claiming you won't need to go to that list as much because the graphic images will just be in your face and be what you want. I haven't found that to be totally the case, but okay, that might work. And there's some other, if we had time to get into it, other nice new features that it has. But really, a lot of it is just more cumbersome. If that were the only thing, that would be a little bit annoying. But the next thing that happened is that all sorts of things simply weren't working. At some point, for instance, one of the first annoyances that I had was on my TiVo minis, not the main DVR unit, but on the mini units. Every time I changed stations, the new station appeared and the screen was frozen for about 15, 20 seconds. before it started. So if you want to switch back and forth between two stations that you were watching, when one went to commercial, you switch to the other one or something like that. You'd be waiting 20 seconds every time you switch stations, which was annoying. And then at some point, it claimed that I couldn't get live TV at all, that all the channels were gone. And I got some strange V66 error as the reason for it. And TiVo, I went on the TiVo forums. They quickly acknowledged that this was a major problem. They're working to fix it. I think they have fixed it because I haven't got that message for a couple of days now. But that obviously was very annoying. And then I found that some of the listings were somehow now inaccurate in ways that they weren't before. So I went to a show that I recorded on Saturday, and when I went to it, it said that I had recorded it on Friday instead of Saturday. And then there were 2 copies of the show, even though I'd only recorded it once. And really, it was only 1 copy because when I deleted it, the second one got deleted as well, even though I never selected. So it was just like a phantom duplicate listing there. And there were all sorts of little quirks like that. I mean, I could go on and on. And it just gets to be annoying after a while. And then, as if that wasn't enough, I have a Logitech universal remote that I use mostly. Of course, you can't use the voice commands with the remote, so I have to switch to the TiVo remote whenever I want to use the voice. But that was fine. I knew that would be the case. But the new interface makes very generous use of 2 commands, back and exit, that were rarely used in the old interface, and may not even be mapped on your Logitech. And so you now have to reprogram, or not totally reprogram, you now have to add coverage for these new commands. I couldn't even get the TiVo to acknowledge that there was an exit command. I got the back command working okay, but not the exit command. And that turned out to then sort of snowball. The exit command is a way in certain circumstances that you can get out of the menu screen and back into a live full screen of your video. And at one point I was stuck. There was no way that I could get out of the menu screen without using the TiVo remote. The Logitech remote had a non-functioning exit command that wouldn't do it for me. And I eventually found a workaround for that as well. But after a while, I'm thinking, it's like a little bit like you were saying about the iPhone earlier, where I had a perfectly good interface. It worked just fine. I had no complaints about it. And so now, just to get this silly voice option, which I'm not going to use all that often anyway, I've turned everything upside down, and 17 things that were working fine before aren't working anymore. And there are all sorts of bugs that they say they're going to address that I'm waiting for them to fix, and on and on and on. I said, this was not worth it. The only thing I can say is I think everybody's going to be forced to get this update at some point. Right now it's optional. At some point it's going to be mandatory. So hopefully they'll have it in better shape when they make it mandatory to everybody.
That was one of the questions, because I've not had that experience with my TiVo, but maybe I haven't done the update. But I definitely don't have a voice remote, so that may be why.
Oh, you haven't done the update. Trust me.
Yeah, I have. I would know.
That's all right. There was no way that you would wonder whether you've done this update. Yeah. So, if there's any doubt, then you haven't done it. So, and you probably can't do it. The update only became available when I paired the remote with the TiVo.
I would like to point out that this is the difference between you and me. You go to a product launch and you get a free TiVo voice remote. I went to a product launch today, and they gave me a little plastic jar full of paper clips.
Ah, okay, well.
But they were blue. They were blue. But
your long paper clips, that could be useful. At least it didn't cause you any problems.
Well, no, that's true. It's kind of hard to mess up a paper clip. Good point. Good point. So, and which TiVo do you have, Ted? Is it possible that this is specific to your model, or do you think it's just the new software update?
Oh, no, it's not specific, because if you go online, which I have spent a good part of last week, I've spent a good part of last week on the phone, sending emails, in community forums, and in support sections of websites. Yes, this is not unique to my model or to me, that's for sure. There are lots of other people that were making the same complaints. Yeah.
Interesting. So voice, it seems like voice is everywhere right now. And I know also that you've had some, well, I got to be careful. You also use the Amazon device, trying not to say the word.
We can call it the echo. I think that gets around the issue of actually saying the trigger word.
Yeah. How has that been going for you?
That's been going absolutely wonderful. There's no doubt. I'm sure we've mentioned this before, but I consider the Echo to be the most significant technological advance that I've had any direct contact with, anyway, since the iPad. So we're talking about what that was in 2010. So we're talking about in the last 7 years that the Echo has changed my technological experience more than anything else. And I now have 4 Echoes in the house, and use them for more and more. And that's part of one of the things that's great about the Echo, is that it keeps getting better without you having to do anything. They keep adding new features. So you don't even have to buy a new Echo to improve on the experience. They now have, for instance, custom lists, so you can say, here's a Trader Joe's list, here's a Costco list, and maintain separate shopping lists, which you couldn't do before. You can now have named reminders, so you can instead of just saying set a reminder for 20 minutes, you can say remind me to turn off the stove in 20 minutes or something like that, and it'll say actually use the words turn off the stove. It didn't used to do that. You can now, and when I say now, I mean over the last 6 to 9 months, all these things have happened. You now have multi-room music, so you can set a group of, if you have more than one Echo, you can set a group of Echoes and say play this music over all Echoes at one time, and it'll do that. They're on and on. And one of the things, actually, one of the biggest surprises, it totally passed me by. I just discovered it the other day, though apparently it happened in March, is that, when I upgraded my sound system in my living room to get a new Yamaha soundbar, and it had Bluetooth support. Whoops, Chuck. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I thought we'd frozen there for a second.
No, I'm here.
So I updated my soundbar to get a new Bluetooth-enabled soundbar, and part of my idea was to be able to play the Amazon Echo stuff over the new speaker, over the Bluetooth connection, so I could get higher quality sound than the speaker itself. The problem was, and I had an original Echo, the problem was, as many people found out during this period of time, the original Echo couldn't do that. The original Echo you could connect something to the Echo and play sound through the Echo over Bluetooth, but you couldn't do Bluetooth out, so to speak, and send sound to another device from the original Echo. So I had to get an Echo Dot to do that. That was the one that was designed to do that, which was okay. I was moving in the direction of getting multiple Echoes anyway. But I like the higher quality sound of the bigger one in the living room because it's such a big space. The bigger, it sounds really tinny in that big room, the Dot. But then I discovered that Amazon, in a firmware, software, whatever update several months ago, allowed the original Echo and the new Echo 2 that replaces it to do exactly that. Now you can send Bluetooth out to speakers, and so now I have a full size Echo in the living room again, and it works just fine with my soundbar. So another example of how Amazon has improved things. The one thing, I guess, two more things. The one thing that I've had problems with is a new feature called Your Voice, where you can train it to recognize your voice, and you can say, "Who is this speaking?" and it'll say, "You're Ted," or something like that, if it was me. And then you're supposed to be able to do things based on the fact that it recognizes your voice. So you can have a voice-specific shopping list, supposedly. So if you say, "What's on my shopping list?" it'll give you the information, and your wife or spouse or friend or son or whatever, daughter, can have a different shopping list, and you can get the shopping list specific to your voice without having to say, "Give me Ted's shopping list." You can just say, "Give me my shopping list," and it'll do it. And according to articles that I read at the time, another thing that it was supposed to do was be able to have customized news feeds, so that you can say, keyword, "Give me my news feed," and it'll just play the news feeds that you selected, and your wife could have, in my case, my wife could have a totally different selection of news things that she wanted to get, and if she says it, it'll be hers. That struck me as something that was going to be a little tricky to work, because it not only depended upon recognizing voice, but you also had to be recognizing that there are account differences. In order for that to work, it had to go to her account, and so I wasn't quite sure how it was going to work. I tested it out; it never worked. That's how it worked, never. And so I called Amazon and spoke to their support about it, and basically they claimed, despite the articles at the time that said that was supposed to work, it's not working yet. And it'll be a while, who knows how long, before it works. It actually, the Your Voice is so limited right now that it's essentially useless as far as I can tell. And to make matters worse, I now recently on my iPhone 10, I think it might be an iPhone 10 problem. On my iPhone 10, I recently started getting error messages saying that I needed to retrain my voice in the Alexa app. And when I went there, it wouldn't let me because the button to begin the training was grayed out and couldn't be selected. So clearly there's something else going on that's wrong. So that's kind of messed up. But that's basically it. What else can I tell you about? I said I got one of the new Echo 2s. I had read reviews that said that the sound quality wasn't as good as on the Echo 1. I would dispute that myself. I think it's just as good, if not better. So take that as a data point if you wish. And I've recently now gotten into smart lighting with the Echo, and that's been fun. I got Lutron's Cassetta light switches, and I've been started installing a couple of them with dimmers. And now it's neat. Not only obviously can you turn the lights on and off, but I just say something like keyword set lighting to 20%, and it instantly goes to 20% of its full power. And it makes you feel very powerful. So you can just walk into a room and say something like that and have the lighting change. So I'm enjoying that as well. So yeah. So just overall, except for the Your Voice feature, it's been great.
I must read the wrong websites, and I try to read a lot of websites. But one of the frustrating things about the Echo with me is that all these things, these capabilities get added, and I'm only picking them up almost anecdotally. You know, somebody says, "Oh, did you see this new thing?" No, I didn't, and I don't know where you saw it. You know, where? I mean, I know you can go on a master list on the Amazon website. And I burned out on that real quick because, okay, so we have an Amazon skill that will play dominoes, and we have an Amazon skill that will play solitaire. And it's like, I don't care. I want, give me some useful stuff. And I don't know how to get through all this because there's so many people adding things to Echo. And that's just a personal frustration. For what it does for me, I really love it. I feel like I could be doing more with it, but I don't want to spend 2 days digging through dominoes and tic-tac-toe and all.
How do I find out about all these new features was basically what you're asking. I do get a weekly email from Amazon Echo saying what the new features are. It says, each Friday, I think it comes and says what's new with Echo this week or something like that. And so I get a lot of the new information that way. And then I do see it on websites. I'm in an Amazon Echo group on Facebook. Sometimes I get some stuff from there. And sometimes it's just, like I said, I trip over it like you do. But you might notice that almost everything that I mentioned, maybe everything that I mentioned, doesn't involve an Alexa skill. I said the word. These are things that are built into the device. And so, yes, I agree with you. That I do have about a dozen or more skills enabled, and I do use some of them occasionally. The biggest problem with skills is that you have to remember how they work and what the trigger words are. Occasionally Amazon will remind me that you can actually ask for some of that information. You can actually ask the Echo device and say, give me information about this skill and how it works, and it'll tell you how it works. And so I forget to do that sometimes, but and so it's probably more helpful than I realize. But I tend not to use those skills just because I often don't want to bother keeping in my head how I'm supposed to do it. So I agree with you with that. But just the basic stuff is pretty wonderful. So.
I will have to go and check my spam folder. Maybe I'm getting those emails and don't even know it, because that's something that I seem to remember those at one point coming, but then I thought they stopped. So I'm glad to hear they didn't.
Yeah,
And
so,
the Facebook group is a perfect idea. I'll have to go and dig that out too. Okay. And any other? Are you going to make me spend any other money or occupy any more time?
no, I think that's it for today.
Okay, well, go ahead.
Let's say we got an Apple Watch, iPhone 10, new TiVo, and a new Echo 2, and whatever. I think that should be plenty.
Yeah,
that should be enough for anybody's Christmas wish list, I think.
I would think so. Unfortunately, there's some expensive ones on there, but there are also some really useful ones, and it just you really do feel like you're living in the future at this point. A lot of the things, it's a couple fits and starts and all, but for the most part, what you can do now with this stuff is just truly amazing.
No, it is. As I've said on several other shows, that I still am impressed with the magic of just walking into a room and speaking and having things happen. It just still blows me away every time I do it. And beyond that, I think I said to somebody the other day, I said like 100, 200 years from now, whatever, assuming that we survive as a species that long, I think people will look back and mark 2007 as a pivot point in our history, before iPhone and after iPhone. I think a lot of things happened before 2007, the whole invention of computers and the arrival of the internet and the World Wide Web and all that stuff was tremendously important. But I think the smartphone just changed everything. It took computing out of an office and made it available everywhere. And I think there are very few people on the planet, just about, except in the most dire poverty straits, that don't have a smartphone. Whether even if it's the only expensive thing you can afford, that's the first thing you get these days, it seems to me. So it's the only connection to the internet for people in large parts of the world. And for people in our world, it's just a ubiquitous, almost essential device. I can't imagine not having one. So.
Yeah, I agree. And when you said everywhere, I mean, it's that you mean everywhere. That means from the grocery store to the bus to the beach. I mean, wherever you are, you can connect to essentially all of human knowledge. You can search for anything you want, from the most inane piece of gossip to the most deep technical subject, and have access to it. And that's staggering. I mean, what would our lives have been like if we'd had this at age 10 or 12?
Wonderful.
Yeah, well, wonderful. Yeah, but I think we probably would have both taken different paths. I don't know what they would have been, but so
there is that aspect to it. I used to teach when I was a college professor. I used to teach statistics. And over the course of my career teaching it, calculators went from being non-existent to being iPhones. And the more advanced and available calculating became, the more you started to have to address the question that students would inevitably ask in one fashion or another: why do I have to know how to do this when I can just tell the iPhone to do it? What's the advantage to me knowing how to do it by hand, or even understanding how it's done? And it becomes a more difficult question to answer when these things are so capable. And I fear, maybe I shouldn't fear it, but I do fear that increasingly happens with everything else now. You were mentioning how the world's information is at your fingertips with an iPhone. Then people can start asking, why do I need to remember anything? Why do I need to know when Columbus discovered America in 1492? If I need to know it, I can just ask my iPhone. So why waste my bandwidth on remembering dates like that? Why do I need to know virtually anything? You could ask on an offhand basis. If I don't need to know it on a daily basis, I can just look it up.
I agree with you completely. And I guess we all ask that question at some point in our education careers, and it takes a little while for you to get the perspective that there's some things that that are absolutely critical to have at your command without having to ask anything.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other things that, I know that there were things that were drilled into my head that I under the guise of being taught how to think. Mm-hmm. And maybe they were good. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. And those were good mental exercises that helped me develop critical thinking and recall and correlation and those kind of things. But at the times, man, it can get really frustrating.
Well, I think critical thinking is at the heart of it. That's one of the reasons to know certain things, to be able to make decisions as to what you believe is true and not true, and to understand the way things work in a way that goes beyond simply checking on facts in a Google search. Yes.
And it seems like in today's world, I mean, the phrase fake news is everywhere on both sides of the political aisle. It doesn't matter what position you have. The skill of critical thinking is probably more important than ever.
Absolutely. Yes.
We got deep there toward the end.
Okay, enough. Let's get back to just how wonderful the iPhone 10 is.
That sounds good to me. Well, I tell you, it's been wonderful having you. I know that you're sitting out a lot more, but anytime you're always welcome. It's always insightful and fun to hear what you're up to and what your thoughts are on this stuff.
Okay, well, we'll do it again.
All right, that sounds good. Are you still writing at Slanted Viewpoint?
Not really. I mean, in principle, yes, but I haven't done much. Really, as you probably have noticed, a lot of my writing now centers around the political situation and my distress with Trump as president.
Right.
And so whatever writing I'm likely to do, even on Slanted Viewpoint, is not likely to be Apple related. I did think about actually writing and working up the notes for this session today. I did think about writing up an article about all the transfer data stuff that we talked about at the start of the show here. I thought that might be an interesting article, but I might never do it also.
Okay. Well, if not at Slanted Viewpoint, then on Facebook and on Twitter, find Ted, follow him, and you'll hear whatever's on his mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ted, it's great to see you. Thanks so much.
Oh, I'm glad I could do it. It's always good to talk to you.
And if we don't get to see each other before, happy holidays.
You too.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Notables on Mac Voices. If you have a really terrific Alexa skill or something you're doing, let me know. Let Ted know. I'd be really interested to know just the kind of things that you all are doing, because I may want to do them. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Mac Voices Facebook group and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.